It didn't go live. What gives? Hi, everybody. You're here on Caris Games. I'm Leo Cloud, creator of the Axe and and I have a Hawaii soul to prove that I'm a game creator. And I'm here today with our wizard. That's not a KKK wizard, just a generic fantasy wizard, Robert Price, who recently saved his beard. So what gives?
Yeah, there's not much of it left, but still enough to give me that mystical tinge.
All right. So why? Is it
Uh,
getting? It's
well,
getting hot, isn't it?
yeah, it was getting kind of long and scraggly looking and making me look like more like a street bum. So I just decided, with the aid of my ace barber, Carol, that I'd also cut my hair a bit. I think it looks a little less homeless person now.
You know, those are tropes and dragons and all these things where basically your players just go around and kill everything they see. So they just call them motor hobos. So and a lot of them are wizards. No, it's like you go into an inn. How much money do the inn people have? A lot. Are any of them like an armor? No. Okay, we fight them to gather money. Excuse me?
Yeah,
That's a
this is
very
all
common
alien
trope.
to me.
It's a very common trope in the game to accidentally fight to get like player characters who are more concerned about amassing material possessions than actually progressing the adventure.
Sounds like a Ferengi game.
Ferengi? I don't know what that is.
Oh, on Star Trek, they're
Oh yeah, the ones with the. I know what
yeah,
it is.
that's right. Yeah,
Think of Ferengis, but just motor hobos, really. Hilarious. So, uh, anything you wanna talk about?
well, let's see. I guess there are rather important things going on in the world that I don't know enough about to comment on, other than sort of shaking in my boots. But let's see.
Oh yeah, shit! I forgot. I almost got ran over by a car, but not like. And you're gonna go like, "What? You mean you like didn't watch the sign in traffic?" And I said, "Ah, no. Like, you remember that there was a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv this week?
I don't
I know it
remember. I
doesn't
get
sound
lost
too.
in the numbers of so many of these things.
There haven't been a while. There haven't been any for a while because of Corona. Because terrorists respect social distancing. It turns out. Who would have figured? Go figure. Go figure. I mean, they can go outside. That would get people infected. That would be dangerous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good thing they're
No,
so
no, no, that would
considerate.
be irresponsible. That would be
Yeah, boy.
irresponsible. Come on. But no, there was a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv on Friday, like a week, not the Friday that was yesterday, like a week ago. And me and a friend were, gonna go on a night on the town, go to some bars and whatever. But I kind of slept in. I was saying, "Oh man, that's lame." Yeah, well, the place we wanted to go to, there was a guy who got in a car and just started running people over. 7 casualties, one dead. Like a 70-year-old tourist from Italy, 6 injured. Yeah, and it's exactly at the place me and my friend wanted to go to.
Whoa,
Yeah,
boy.
I got like,
I guess God liked you guys better than the other unfortunates.
well, the lesson is, if you want to sleep, sleep.
Yeah, I may go
Uh,
back to bed after this. In fact,
it's always a good idea to sleep.
yeah,
That's what I
boy.
do. I was in Israel visiting my family for my birthday and for Passover,
Hmm.
which was fun. Um, so that's what happened to me. I don't think I'll
Well,
get. Sorry, what?
last night, Carol and I went with a couple of friends to a fascinating planetarium show where they played this incredible thing for the 50th anniversary of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And they just played the album with spectacular visuals. I felt like Dave at the climax of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Mm.
So that was an amazing experience. Of course, I wore my Dark Side of the Moon tie. Well, the first time I've worn a necktie in years, though I got a bunch of them. My favorite being my Spider-Man tie, but I figured I'd go with the appropriate theme.
Oh, I don't wear ties. They look like nooses to me. I mean, if I have
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
I do it. But if I don't have to, I'm not doing it.
yeah. Me neither. You can see I'm gloriously free of them right now.
Uh, Uh, there's a funny type of tie that I do want to wear is when you take a tie and you take another and you take another and you take another and you just lift them up to your nose and you pretend to be like Cthulhu.
Yeah, I figured that was coming. Yeah,
Yeah. Or a mind flayer. Do you know what a mind flayer is?
no.
Mind flayer, it's like a creature and that's really popular in fantasy games, which is like taller than a human, but it has the head of an octopus and tentacles coming from its mouth area, and it eats brains.
Woo.
Very Lovecraftian. Like think of a human-sized Cthulhu.
Yeah, I bet you that's where they got the idea.
Yeah, definitely. It's called a mind flayer, and it grabs you and it sucks your brains out, and it has psionic powers. Some of them have magic, which are not psionics. It's really cool.
Huh.
Uh, so one thing I did want to talk to you about, I remember a while ago seeing you give a lecture about zealots and fanaticism.
Hmm. Yeah, I did. Just recently, I was talking to uh, Alejandro Diaz, who hosts a show that I'm on frequently. And we were talking about that, and especially about today's wokeism as a kind of religious zealotry. And of course, most of that applies to any kind of zealot. And it doesn't have to, I mean, it's almost an arbitrary flip of a coin as to what doctrine you're going to be fanatical about. But once you get to be a fanatic, there are certain characteristics, you might almost say rules to follow, but it's really habits of mind. Uh, and
Mm.
uh, and most of it seems to follow from the mindset itself and the posture. It's almost the definition of being a fanatic. For instance, you maybe the one that is the most obvious today in this secular religion of wokeism is the blind faith, I would say, that you and your buddies are right on whatever the doctrine is, and
Mm.
there's no point in debating it because you already know you're right. And
Mm.
that you would think people would see through that because it's like the old jibe when you say, "Oh yeah, my mind's made up. Don't confuse me with the facts." And that's they would say, well, of course I've got the facts, but how did they wind up at that enviable position? Was it as religious leaders have said, well, I have this direct revelation from God, as in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says to Peter, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. So you just
Oh.
received this bulletin from the blue. Well, usually it seems to me people that are fanatics and zealots really have not been convinced. That they might have, but it's more of an emotional thing. James Barr, in a great book called Fundamentalism, said that most fundamentalists of any sort cannot be reasoned out of it because they didn't get reasoned into.
Reasoned into it, yeah.
And usually with some sort of emotional appeal. It provided security, or like Eric Hoffer says in his great book, The True
Oh yeah, to
Believer.
believe it, coffin. Mm.
Yeah,
I know
what a
that.
book.
Mm.
He says that the person who becomes a fanatical member of any group of any kind, the communists, Nazis, religious groups, they hate themselves subtly and want to lose themselves in the mass, in the
Mm.
collective. So they allow someone else. I saw a good cartoon illustration of this years ago during the great cult scare of the late 70s in the United States. In this cartoon, you see the profile of a guy, and then there's a hand that comes down and lifts the brain out, and and I guess substitutes whatever Mao's little red book or the Bible or whatever.
Or a
And
mind flayer. Mind flayer.
oh, yeah, basically,
About the
yes.
different brains with its tentacles.
Yeah, there you go. That's not a parody of nothing. That is what happens. And from there on, and you're only too happy to have somebody to tell you what to think and to give you the idea of who you are. Like, I'm always suspicious of any kind of nice sounding mysticism that says what you think is yourself is not really a self at all. It's some higher thing that you need to liberate and suppress the psychological self, the self you see when you look in the mirror, the self that's measured on a personality test. No. That's really just physical, which is sort of true because emotions and thoughts are, electrochemical impulses in the brain.
They're activities of the brain, but they're not
Yeah.
reducible to the brain. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
But they'll say, well, all of that, you see, it is what some call a psycho-mental self, but we're talking about something higher that really is totally different from that. My reaction to that is no thanks. I think I know and like the self that I am used to. I don't want to transcend it and put it on the shelf because who's going to tell me? I mean, whoever is teaching me this is defining the real me instead of me defining it. And no, that's irresponsible. That's just you're just abdicating responsibility. I think. So I love all these mystical religions, but as an outsider, I don't really go for them. But that's basically what fanatics do, though usually they're not aiming as high as Buddhists and Hindus do. They're letting an ideology take over them, so they become merely one more programmed robot. And so that's all they want to talk about. That's somebody defined a fanatic as a one-track mind that's gone off the track, and that seems right.
That was good.
Anything? It's totalistic. Gene Houston, who's
there's no black and white. There's no reasons. There's no degrees. No shades of gray, no nuance. You're either bad or you're good, or you either agree.
For instance,
you disagree.
And that's the way trigger words work in this thing. I had somebody complain about my recent book, Judaizing Jesus. Well, they said, this is anti-Semitic. And I said, did you read this book? It's not at all. And in fact, I lampoon people that tried to make Jesus into a rejecter of Judaism and a violator of the Torah and so on. Did you actually read it? And I'm not sure the guy did, but if he did, he didn't see most of the words because, I think it was just because, what's that? Judaizing? Well, that's an old Greek word. It just refers to the fact that originally that a lot of non-Jews in the Roman Empire liked what they heard about Judaism. Some actually converted. Some became God-fearers, so-called, and would at least attend synagogue and so forth. And they said, these Jews have a nobler religion than ours. Like, we've got a God who's a rapist, Zeus. They don't have anything like that. Sounds pretty good to me. And others said, well, the Sabbath they have, that's not a bad idea. And the more of these Jewish mores you adopted, they would say you're Judaizing. And
they like the taste of like Netherlands.
I'm
You
sorry. Go
could say
ahead.
they like the taste of our kneddelach. Kneddelach, it's like a matzah ball.
Oh. Uh-huh.
They like the taste of the matzah.
So what the heck? I mean, it's they used to say you don't have to be Catholic to enjoy the singing nun. This is back in the early '60s. You don't have to be Jewish to enjoy Jewish food, etc.
You really don't.
Why not? But today we got this fanatical self-imposed apartheid where they say, "Oh, that's culture. You can't have a
Oh yeah,
taco night unless you're."
Holy shit, Dr. Player, get this. I was once in a forum, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to make vampires that like Janis, Jainism, right? It's a religion in
Uh,
India. And I was like, Jainis stop eating, stop drinking in order to abnegate themselves and stuff. What if we had like fantasy vampires that decided not to suck blood for the exact same reasons and they would become deeply religious because of it, blah, blah, blah. A cool idea,
huh,
I think it is. And he was like,
interesting.
"Oh, Chinese? Is that like Hindu? Is that like Hinduism or Buddha?" And I said, "No, they're their own religion." And then I started explaining to it. And he said, "Hey, I don't know. Your idea sounds like cultural appropriation to me." This
Yeah,
guy doesn't even know. Amazingly, this guy doesn't even know what it is, and he says it's cultural appropriation. But no, but it makes sense that he shouldn't know because for him, it's the incredible segregation of it. It's like, oh, that's those people's thing. We have our stuff, and nope, no connection between them.
yeah,
Like
I
it's
don't
not.
get that.
No, it's
Why?
not
I mean,
either.
because we used to think that a mixture of cultures was a healthy thing. And of course, we still think that, but
Yeah.
the idea, hey, so and so's got a pretty good idea here. I remember preaching a sermon years ago where I said, here's something we can learn from Jainism. And
Mm.
like I like the idea of ahimsa, not destroying life, but sometimes you
Oh.
have to, and the Jainists have this graded scale of how many senses an organism has, and so if you swat a mosquito, it's not like killing a person. I mean, obviously you would think, but there's some people that, oh no. Well, I said the Jainists have thought about this. We haven't, and there's something to
No.
learn there. And clothing, food, music, and people used to realize that you're showing admiration for another culture by borrowing from it. Now it's like, oh no, we got the copyright on this. You can't use it. It's only a step away from segregation. In fact,
I
that's
mean,
come
it's
up
still the
again.
same thing. So you can have this guy. He doesn't know what it is. He just knows, oh, that's cultural appropriation, and that's bad. Which is amazing.
Uh,
Which is obviously the reason he doesn't even know what it is. He's discouraging of figuring out about. It's so stupid. Once you think about it, it's not. Wow. I think I lost a few IQ points just remembering that. No,
the,
but another type of fanatic that I noticed is the person who kind of agrees with the idea that your true self is your higher self. They agree with that premise, but they say, well, actually, your true self is your lower self, and any immorality, any inhibitions, anything that takes you away from human nature, that's actually evil and wrong because human nature is good.
I hate to use them as an example, but Anton LaVey type Satanists
Mm.
are like that. They don't
Well,
actually
this was
believe
a
in the devil.
lot older than these guys. I mean, these were types of I forgot they were a type of Gnostics you told me about that they were like this.
There were libertine Gnostics, but their rationale was that the laws of conventional morality are imposed by the archons, these
Yeah,
beings that do rule the world, but they're like a gang of thugs. It's like if you
yeah.
lived in
So
the
basically,
mafia
not very
type
good
of world.
gods.
And in that case, that we know better. Those laws don't apply to us,
Right.
but they're true. But the reason they didn't was they said their true self was this divine spark. Whereas with LeVay's group and others like it, they're 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 not into being evil. I'm sure there are lunatics that are, but that's not this
No,
group's
that doesn't
either.
count for nothing.
they're religious humanists, and they just have a flair for the theatrical, and and that's not my caricaturing them. They readily admit that, and they say human nature is not to be stifled. You're just going to wind up a sissy and a hypocrite.
Depressed, picnic, all those stuff. Yeah, but here's the thing: human nature. This is the thing that people don't realize. Human nature. If a person can do it, it's human nature.
Mm.
That's all human nature means. It could mean good things, it could mean bad things, but human beings can choose what they do. So human nature is meta. It's neither good nor bad. It's whatever you choose it to be. You know?
Yeah, if it weren't natural to you, you'd never have an inclination to do it.
Well, nobody would do it. It would be just like, I don't know, some alien taking over your brain and making you go like a zombie or so. That would not be human nature. Everything else is.
Well, why do we call fanatics zombies sometimes? Because they have kind of entered a realm of living death. They're trying to suppress natural instinct. And I began to mention Jean Houston, who's I think a Jungian analyst. She says that she was talking about either the cults, the new religions of the 70s, or perhaps the Jesus movement. I forget which now, but she said that this religious commitment they accept sort of consolidates and solidifies their identity, but at the cost of excluding everything else. It's
all that's in modern movements, like people who join Greenpeace. Which, by the way, the guy, if you're sympathetic to Greenpeace, great. But the guy who made Greenpeace said, yeah, it became a fringe cult, basically. The guy who made Greenpeace says that about Greenpeace.
Go along with the global warming thing, which appears to me to be.
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't. That's right. He thinks anthropomorphic global warming is not just a red herring. I think he believes in the sun cycle.
Yeah, I just and the way they deal with evidence, they'll suppress it if it doesn't go along with them, and they have a cult view. Or the COVID thing that became a cult, basically.
Oh yeah, when the conspiracy theorists were just a year ahead of the news, like with the lab leaks and like with the lab leak idea, with everything. But that's what happens when people shrug off the responsibility of thinking in favor of something else. It's like. You remember Heinlein? Did you ever read a book by Robert Heinlein?
Did he write Starship Troopers?
Yeah, Starship Troopers, Stranger in a Strange Land.
I've read Starship Troopers. I must confess shamefully that I've not read Stranger in a Strange Land.
You'd love it. You'd love it. It's amazing.
I should read it, definitely.
Go read it. You have homework. Professor, you have homework.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I felt guilty for years for not having gotten around to that.
It's a good time to start. It's really good. But no, a big part, and this is, I was going to talk about Stranger in the Strange Land, but a big part of Heinlein's teams is that personal freedom and personal responsibility come together. And if you slug off personal responsibility, meaning you don't do something, but you don't pay for your actions, then somebody else is going to have. Then you're going to have to take somebody's freedom away from him. Like let's say you don't want to be healthy, so don't want to be healthy. You don't want to take care of your health, so instead you say, "Oh, wear a mask and don't go outside. Nobody go outside." All because, which is a lot easier than actually taking responsibility of your health, watching what you eat, examining evidence, working out, hygiene, all of that stuff. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna tell everybody to wear a mask and force everybody to stay inside.
Yeah. That is what
that was. Yeah. Sorry,
that's what Nietzsche called Nein sagen, no saying to life.
Nein sagen. And I think that's true for the fanatic. The fanatic doesn't take the responsibility of thinking, so he wants to take people's freedom away from them because it kind of bothers him. I mean, the idea of it bothers him because it's a reflection on him. It's like, hey, lazy, why aren't you using your head?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, B.F. Skinner in Walden 2 uh, uh, conceived a society where everybody was conditioned to do the right thing, the socially optimal thing. Well, we do want to get to a society where everybody will behave in a positive way and be good to themselves and others, but you can't condition them like pigeons or rats in a Skinner box, or
Mm.
it's all worthless.
No, the
They
closest people
really
ever got to
chose.
a Skinner box was Auschwitz. So, some guy actually said that the closest people ever got to it is something like Auschwitz. Not kidding.
Ugh.
I
Oh
mean
boy.
that's what it requires to have such control over life and death and conditions. I
Mhm.
mean that's well, I
Mm.
guess a prison camp in North Korea or a re-education camp or some of the sort. That's what it's going to look like. So, something that you still don't want to see.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what the well-meaning lunatics that run the United States government are doing now. We know better than you do,
uh,
so we're going to take your gas-powered stove, your air
uh,
condition, your gas-guzzling car away from you. You don't like it? Well, we have ways of making you like it. And it's amazing, what happened to freedom. We can't have you spreading these unorthodox notions, so we're
uh,
gonna deplatform you or shut you up or send spies in. They're sending FBI
the
agents in
secret
the
police.
Catholic churches because they're
Oh yeah, I heard
subversive.
about that. That's. I mean, at this point, it's literally the secret police, and by secret police, I don't mean they go around kidnapping people. I wouldn't suppose that they are. See, secret police means they get to enforce the laws and have immunity from transparency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the biggest trick, and they probably I don't know how talented they are, but they have the best PR men in the world. Because not only do they, because not because get this, they convince people that they're doing it for their safety.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
throughout history, there was nothing as detrimental for the safety of a nation as a group of people who had a monopoly over the use of force and the application of the law that were exempt from transparency.
Yeah.
At one point,
Go
the
ahead, sir.
Praetorian Guard even auctioned away the title of emperor.
What about the title of emperor? I missed some
It
words
was
before.
auctioned away by the Praetorian Guard in Rome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I've always thought that in Plato's Republic, the way he describes it, it sounded more like the Soviet Union
Yeah.
than Western democracies. You have this elite who
Mm.
can see more clearly, they say, than anybody else, and so they will decide what's right, and then they control the auxiliaries
Mm.
who will make sure that their laws are carried out. And don't you plebeians worry about it. We know better. Oh, no thanks. No, no, not for me. Mm,
It's so stupid.
mm,
I mean,
yeah.
it's stupid. And also, all of these people who think they're smarter than everybody are always dumb. That's just how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. It's trouble. I mean, when they say, yeah, but we just don't trust the common people. They don't know what their own good is. Well, that's probably true, but you don't know what it is either. That's the big deal. Like
Yeah,
one of
like
my favorite
uh, sorry, go
Uh,
ahead. Go ahead.
one of my favorite, though negatively, if that such a thing, passages in the Gospel of John is when the elite opposing Jesus
Mm.
they're asking for a report from these guys they sent to arrest him, and they didn't. And so we've never heard a guy speak like this. And they say, well, you are you deceived too? And they said, this multitude that knoweth not the law is
Mm.
accursed. Now, that's just what you don't want to have, but you're going to have if an elite who are so self assured of their own wisdom
Mm.
can tell you what to do.
Mm. And they're always, and then the hallmark of these people is ridiculous self righteousness. I
Mm.
mean, people who are so convinced of their self righteousness, you tell yourself, did these people ever stop and think, hey, what if we're wrong? Nah, how can I be wrong? Come on. there's no even backup plan, which is why their plans fail so miserably from time to
Yeah,
time. They meet reality, but they find somebody else to take the fall for them. I mean, these say what you want about these people, but they're geniuses when it comes to finding other people to finding other people to take the responsibility of what they do.
scapegoating.
Oh, yeah. In China, they call them leeks, leeks. You know, the plant, which can be
Oh,
harvested again and again.
huh.
You know, because leeks are like, anyways, they call them leeks, and there was I've seen this recently, a report of one lady who managed to get like 9 figures of money out of China and moved to I think Australia, and she said, "Oh, we harvested the leeks pretty well."
Wow.
And like the middle class or everybody who's not part of the Communist Party in China openly call themselves leaks, and they say, "Let's not have kids. Let's not have any more leaks." It's really bad. Like,
Woo.
I mean,
Boy, oh boy.
you got to ask yourself, when does this type of this is why this attitude leads to exploitation so quickly,
Mm.
because people just why does it? Well, it just leads to exploitation because it needs other people to take responsibility for these stupid, groundless ideas of these people who are so self-assured they think they're geniuses and they're not.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, geniuses and they're not, and eventually people come in that just use that to exploit them, just to
Mm.
get stuff out of them that they don't deserve.
Mm.
It's amazing how starts off with undeserved knowledge and ends up in undeserved anything else. You know what I mean?
The fanatic.
I mean, the fanatic thinks he's entitled to an idea he's not entitled to, or
Yes, that's right.
certainty he's not entitled to.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like what, like that's the problem with the lack of intellectual honesty. People that say, oh, you got to make a leap of faith as I did, or you'll never find meaning in life. Well, I like what Walter Kaufman said. If you're telling me reason is inadequate and therefore I should just basically throw the dice, flip a coin to find out what's true. You're making. I mean, reason may be inadequate ultimately to tell you certain things, but blind faith is no better. I mean, it's worse because now there's no sense of proportion.
Mm,
Because faith is, against of the odds. It's believing something that you know there are no adequate
yeah,
grounds
I
to
believe it
believe. So
because
why are you believing it?
yeah, I like it. It makes me feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's,
Yeah.
that's the reason that people want this.
Hmm.
And all the rationalizations kind of work to do that, and that's one reason. Like the most fanatical and the most, the inquisitors. Like think of the inquisitor in the Spanish Inquisition. They will probably have the most doubts of all.
Yeah, you're really trying to suppress your own doubt, and I think
Mm.
that evangelism is at least the mainspring of it. I think is you're trying to convince yourself because the more votes you can harvest
Uh,
and get somebody to say, "Oh, yeah, okay, I'll believe that." Whew, there's one more that agrees with me, and you're building your peer group by doing that. Hey, they all think it's
yeah, it's
true.
kind of like thinking by a surrogate. A
Yeah.
surrogate certainty. Oh my god. There was a funny thing. My dad once had a bodyguard. Okay, don't
Mm.
ask me why. He had a bodyguard, and every time somebody asked, "Hey, is that your bodyguard?" he replied, "Oh, good. You also see him."
Oh boy.
So it's kind of a surrogate. Yeah. Anyways, the fanatics have a surrogate certainty for the people who don't believe them. Now, I gotta ask you: are all religious people, to some degree, or I don't know, organized religions, are they all like that, or it's just a thing that happens, but doesn't have to happen? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that most people, I hate to use this term, but I call a lot of the mass of conventionally religious people, I call them the pew potatoes instead of couch potatoes, that they're
Mm,
well-meaning people and their religion provides the commandments to follow, and generally it's wholesome and they're better with being religious than not. For instance, I know some leading atheists who seem to have no morality whatever and are
Yeah.
busy trying to live down to the stereotype of the godless
Mm.
atheist. So sometimes religion is something people need to provide the morality, but they haven't really thought it out, and nor are they fanatically committed to it because they're living in the world and trying to be successful in it and accepted by it. And there's a lot you can do toward that end without moral compromise, but they're just
Mm.
sort of getting along with the herd, and nothing wrong with it. It's kind of like when the rabbis say, all God demands in the Torah is that you be a good person, but if you really want to go farther, you can do what God loves. If you're simply um, not doing the wrong thing, well, that's all we can ask, and that's good enough. But
Mm.
there is a higher level you can climb to, and sometimes people do that and go off course and take the flying leap and become fanatics
Mm.
because they don't know how to get to the higher thing.
Oh, I get it. It's like a shortcut to virtue, or at least the religion's idea of virtue. So instead of actually doing anything useful, you just go around and shout at people and proclaim it loudly, putting on airs, so to speak.
Yes, yes, that's
I know
right.
people like that. I even know atheist people like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
you bet. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
they like I've often compared militant atheists with people that who have they're on the anti-religious team, and let's say they were on the religious team in the stadium, but
Mm.
now they've seen through it, and so they're on the anti-religious team, but they're just like they were before. They're just the mirror image. They want to
Yeah.
evangelize people into atheism. They'll have bumper stickers and buttons. There is no God, etc. I think you're like, why don't you just, instead of switching teams, just get the heck out of the stadium, quit the game, and because they're doing the same thing, like they always say about Paul in the Book of Acts, that he's so anti the Christians, he's dragging them off to jail and interrogating them and all that.
Mm.
But once he becomes one of them, he just takes the same attitude on the other team. And he's saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, this one's a heretic," and I don't know if that's actually what Paul was like, or if there even was one. But it's a great
Mm.
example where you just switching teams.
A lot of people I know who are religious and stopped being religious, or or not religious and became religious. They don't really change their personality or how they think,
Hmm.
especially how they think. Like I know people who are I know a guy who went from an atheist to a very religious person, and his mode of thinking didn't change one bit.
Hmm.
Just the stuff he believed changed, but the way he thinks about stuff, same.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's so ironic. You just have a different drug of choice.
It's kind of like switching a baseball team.
Yeah,
Which I don't know because I don't like team sports. I
yeah,
never
me
got into
neither.
it. Okay, but it's kind of like just switching a laundry. I mean, you know, a lot of these guys play for the other teams. I mean, it's basically just how did Seinfeld say laundry? You're cheering for different laundry.
Huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
once I once thought it would be funny to have a button, a badge to wear that has a picture of Jerry Seinfeld and the letters WW JD, which usually means what would Jesus do, but what would Jerry do?
depends. The real life Jerry or the Jerry or the kind of the same person.
Hmm?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of fantasy novels, books, games, stuff like that features like a religion in it, or
Mhm.
like a religious order in it, because it's a fantasy thing, and you can have any type of wacky metaphysics and
Mhm.
magic that you want, and even gods who intervene. A lot of it is done weird because if there was actually a god and he was there, people wouldn't be religious because you know what I
Yeah,
mean. It
that's
wouldn't.
right. Because faith would no longer be
Uh,
uh, operative or necessary, because if it yields to sight, then it's uh, like on the way they used to depict Superman's home planet, Krypton. In the early issues of Superman, everybody on Krypton had superpowers. Kal-El didn't suddenly get him once he arrived in the earthly conditions. Well, that's the way it would be if there's if the supernatural is part of the ground rules of life. There's nothing fantastic about it. Something else might be fantastic, some even higher thing. But if magic really works, it becomes in a novel, it
yeah,
becomes part of the mundane reality.
yeah.
As like in Lord of the Rings, well, yeah, of course there are orcs and Sauron and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Uh,
Oh, did you hear? The company that makes Dungeons and Dragons decided that orcs are racist.
oh, I did hear about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, okay. Now, full disclaimer: orcs in Dungeons and Dragons are not like in Lord of the Rings. They're sapient. They have free will. Some of them are evil. Some of them are good. They are prone to savagery and ferocity for some reason. But even with these upgraded orcs that are basically moral agents for everything, and sometimes they're bad. Most of the time are bad. Nah, they're like, nah, get rid of them. Racist. Don't like it. Bye. Mm.
Yeah, the very idea of a ethnic group that is ferocious or whatever is that they frown on it. Like I've always wondered if the Ferengi again on Star Trek, if anybody says that oh that's racist, well there aren't any Ferengi, but I do have to admit if you perceive them as like a parody image of an actual group. That's like that was a problem in the Phantom Menace, the Star Wars
Oh
movie.
yeah, the guy with the nose.
Oh, Jar Jar Binks. Yeah, he was
No,
obviously
not
supposed
Jar
to.
Jar. The guy who was Anakin's owner.
Oh, Qui Gon Jinn.
No, no, his owner. The guy. Anakin was a slave, and so was Shmi. And the slave, they said, and the owner was said to be, yeah, this is just an anti-Semitic caricature. I mean, he has a big nose, he's greedy, and I'm like,
Yeah,
yep,
and also the whoever they were, these.
Jar Jar race.
Oh no, the ones that were the big business tycoons, and they, you. Some people said you're making a caricature of the Japanese. Well, I
Yeah,
that crossed my mind also. That's a bit different. I admit if that's what you're doing, yes, that might be racist. But
might be like you're picking these people out and you're dressing them up as something else. But
mm,
like between us, I don't think that was the case because if you know anything about George Lucas, you know he loves his samurai movies.
yeah,
And
yeah, good
he
point.
really loves
Yeah.
his samurai movies, and he would just southern Japanese anything for no reason. I mean,
Hmm,
look, Jedi's are basically samurais in space.
hmm,
So, maybe, who knows? But that's a little bit on the nose, sometimes literally.
hmm. Well, I
Uh,
like the way that they dealt with the Klingons on Star Trek Next Generation. They're like space barbarians, but with a code of nobility. And they've become the rough customers, but the good guys nonetheless. Whereas on the original series, they were all just no damn good. But the Next Generation version was much more interesting, and somebody with some knowledge of anthropology was working on that because they were different, and you probably wouldn't have embraced everything they did, but you had to respect it. They weren't. There were bad Klingons, but there were good ones too, and that was sensitively done and gutsily done. I liked that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard this, but the company that makes Dungeons and Dragons decided to do away with orcs. No, so not orcs. To do away with half elves and half orcs.
Yes, I don't exactly know what that was, but I heard about that.
So
What
half
are
elf
they?
is like an elf father or an elf and a human offspring, and they can have children, and they like
Hmm.
have some features of one and some features of others.
Hmm.
And they got their own specific mechanics that other races in the games didn't have, and kind of makes sense. Like you have a dwarf, and you have a halfling or a hobbit, and you have a human, and you have an elf. The Dungeons and Dragons is a game where the statistics of your characters are represented by mechanics, and your biology and morphology would reflect that. I mean, it makes sense that a halfling wouldn't be as strong as, let's say, an orc, right? Or
Hmm.
a dwarf. Yeah. So they kind of reflect that, but now they're saying, oh no, if you want to be a half elf, you just have the statistics of a full elf. Huh? Why? Because it's problematic and insensitive to the sensitivity readers. Don't ask me how it works. I don't get it. Like, I think these people are literally against, what do you call it when people of mixed ethnicities have children together?
Uh,
Intermixing?
Miscegenation
Yeah,
or
miscegenation. These people are literally against miscegenation
yeah,
for fantasy
it's
creatures.
that strikes me as like in the old days that's what a demigod was. As a character he was especially interesting because he had divine power, but humanity like that's really well done in the remake of Clash of the Titans, where Perseus, I guess it is. Yeah, he is a demigod, and because of it, he doesn't want. He feels like if he uses his divine nature and powers, he's cheating, and he says, "I'm going to do what I do as a human." Well, that makes him more of an interesting
Yeah, that is
character,
interesting.
and it's
But this is
people
a
just.
miscegenation of like divine creatures, and even though you have divine creatures in Dungeons and Dragons, but they're not too special. I know it's stupid. It's dumb, but now they're against miscegenation of two creatures. Oh, and get this, they call them species, and then in the next sentence they say, "Oh yeah, they can interbreed,"
Uh,
which is the
uh,
exact opposite of species. Like, enough! Like, why are you
uh,
doing this to us? Just quit. Like, enough. Just leave us the game. You leave us alone. I've literally thought of proposing them a service. Look, we just pay you, you get the money, and leave the game alone.
yeah, my
Like, and
gosh,
this
are
is
they going to go through with that?
what my idea? No. Oh, what?
Are they? I mean, are they going to eliminate the halflings?
Halflings are not. Halflings are a different thing. Oh, I mean half
Oh, okay.
breed.
Uh-huh.
Oh no, halflings are basically hobbits because hobbits is a trademark. So
Okay. The half elves and all that.
from everything I can see, yes.
I bet you're going to have a sectarian split there,
There
where you're
already
going to
is
have.
one. There already is one. And look, here's the thing about these games. Every time there's a new edition, there are people who just don't move on to the new one and keep with the different one. It's called the edition wars. It's usually been
Oh,
bad. It's been bad usually. The last one was not very bad. The one before it was pretty bad, and the one before that was bad. This one is going to be the worst.
boy, oh boy! Because are you going to have local groups that are divided on this, or do they all tend as a group to be on one side or the other?
Usually there's actually a person who runs the game. He usually is the one to decide because he's the one
Uh,
doing all the work.
huh.
Usually, I mean, there's feedback, but let's face it, it's minimal. But no, this is going to be a full-on edition wars, which honestly, to me as an indie creator, is really good because that means I get a bit closer to killing a dragon because the dragon is stupid. I mean, it's like every gamer's dream is to, or every guy who plays these games, its dream is to kill a dragon, and here's one.
Hmm.
but the dragon is doing the work for me.
Ha ha. Boy.
Literally doing the work for me. It's like, how can I fuck up the mole? How can I fuck up more
Yeah, it
dungeons?
looks like it. That seems to be the holy grail. Does this kind of thing happen with Call of Cthulhu? Is there
Uh,
similar?
kinda, but not really. I'm not a big follower of the Call of Cthulhu game. I don't think so. Not that I know. There's no any this type of fanaticism, and this is a fanaticism in Call of Cthulhu. I do remember there was a big hubbub over a game called Berlin: The Wicked City, which is like Lovecraftian pulp adventures in Weimar, 1920s to
Oh,
1930s
hmm.
Berlin. But that was just because Berlin was so of the time was so disturbing that people felt genuinely uncomfortable with it.
Huh.
I mean, they felt so uncomfortable that the people playing it, whenever they got to the mythos stuff and all of the creepy monsters, they were relieved because they didn't have to deal with the awful reality of, Depression era Berlin.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not kidding. Like when seeing I don't know, deep one gives you relief. I'm not kidding. That was a hubbub, but it was a sensitive topic. But no, it's Call of Cthulhu is pretty tame compared to the other, just because it's so niche. I think I don't know if anybody is watching this and knows more about Call of Cthulhu than me. Tell me, but I don't think so. This only happens in these type of games in a small community, other community. This is always the most vocal community for some reason. It's weird.
Hmm. Well, I
Not
guess
that
it's
I'm
the oldest of those games, isn't it? Dungeons and Dragons.
Uh, yes and no. I mean, remember those new editions, and every edition is kind of a different thing, and kind of brings to it a different crowd. So we're on the fifth. There's still a community for people on the third and a half,
Hmm.
and then they splintered off into another game called Pathfinder, which is their competitor,
Huh.
and that's its own community. So there's like a splinter sect,
Huh.
and
Fascinating.
those people who form this, and there's also the OSR, which is the old school revival, which are people who are trying to revive the feel, not the mechanics, but the feel of the older games that came out in the 80s, like
Huh.
the second edition and advanced edition, which is usually guys on blogs. I mean, it's almost wholly in the blogosphere.
Hmm.
And you have indies and you have other titles like Vampire the Masquerade and Cyberpunk and uh, Savage World, which is very much inspired by Conan. Savage Sword of
Oh.
Conan, Savage Worlds, um, and then you have the indie stuff, which is where I live basically.
Hmm.
So it's a big landscape. It's not very big. I mean, it's getting bigger, but it's not very big. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, it's crazy.
Fascinating. That human creativity has no limits. It's amazing.
It does, but if you follow these games, you think it doesn't, because a lot of it is feels like a repeat of a repeat of a repeat of a repeat. Like I don't really know what's gonna happen. Like, and if it's like one of those movies where in the first 5 minutes, you know what's gonna happen all the way to the ending.
Yeah.
Now you're saying how can you tell what's gonna happen all the way to the ending? Well, you just read so many of these, and you've just seen it before. Maybe it's a bit
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
Like me and a friend of mine watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and we just made fun of it throughout the whole movie. I mean, people looked at us like, "Why are they laughing? This isn't even the funny part." And then there was a joke, and they were like, "Oh, I think we might have ruined it for the whole movie theater just because we laughed at the joke ahead of time."
So
You know
you
when this happened?
so you made a hasty exit from the theater before the
No,
mob could form.
no, nobody cares. Nope.
I have to make a hasty exit. I'm afraid I've got
Oh,
to get going, but let's gab again soon.
it was really fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the most important. And hopefully, the people watching us had fun and they got cool ideas about how to make inquisitors and religious organizations and all of that stuff when
Mm,
they play
yeah,
games.
do it yourself cult. Yeah.
Yeah. How to also sit. I forgot to mention this. I really wanted to say this. The guy who made Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, he was a Jehovah's Witness for one point in his life,
Oh, what do you know?
and eventually he got discommunicated from them. But get this, not because of his game was satanic or demonic or something, just because he really liked alcohol.
Oh no. Hmm.
So, anyways, I was wondering, like, and that's pretty obvious. That's the reason there are so many cults in this game. The guy who made it was in one.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I do have to get going, but it's
All
been
right.
great. I'll be
All right.
with you again soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day, and remember, keep on rolling the dice.
Hallelujah.